Stan,
We'll have an extra
It
card.
had 4 ratings.
All right.
It had a 4 rating.
And that's something.
No, 3.7.
No, it's
Just
4. I
showing it
looked
to
it
her
up
briefly.
before.
someday I
They
will.
did me a favor.
Yeah, they bumped up to 4 rating.
I need to learn better.
Oh, my
Just
So I
God.
want to move steps.
Okay,
And that was what the MMR was, a 19.5.
You're gonna wanna buy this.
What it said.
is it going? Oh, it's already going. All right, who's moderating this?
Mike. Come on, Mike, right here.
So, what are some funny things that you remember growing up?
It was all work. Mike, there was no funny things. Yeah, I have to think about that a minute.
My funny things I already spoke of.
My funny thing is coming down to 16 Mile Road, spending a week with you. I remember at your house, we had like a wood place where you put wood for the fireplace. We could go in there and come out the back room, and I don't know what that room was, but we would make circles, chase each other through there, and that was always fun to go to the city.
Yeah.
And you know what I remember is that your dad coming up with his brothers, and they're all decked out and walking through when we had corn across from Gorgles. And they had dogs, and they'd start and walk through the cornfield and they were hunting pheasants. That was a big deal.
They'd come in at noon, and they'd all have their limits, which would be 2 birds. You know, they had some good dogs. I don't know which uncles it was of yours. I remember there was Art.
Harold had good, and Art both
You
had
remember
good
he
dogs.
had those, you know, as a young boy, he had those German pointers, and boy, I remember they'd go back and forth, you know, and they knew there was a bird, and they would just freeze. And that nose would stand there, and they'd give him the signal or whatever, and he'd go after it. Of course, the bird would flush the bird out, and then they'd drop it. But, well, that's how they had it onto our house. I remember there was 5 Dunnenberg boys, all carpenters, and they all would come up hunting. They came up a day early, and Daddy had the trusses and the lumber there, and they had it on in the living room. And,
The front in their bedroom.
yeah, their bedroom in the
Oh,
front.
yeah.
They did it one day by 3 o'clock. They were all done. You know,
Whoa.
5 carpenters that knew what they were doing. You know, he had the blocks in and maybe the plate, you know, the sill plate down, and the next day they would go hunting, and they'd all get their limit. But they'd come in at noon. My mom would fix lunch, and they'd all have their limit. You know.
What I remember is that it was the first time I'd ever seen it, but they all wore those vests, and they could stick their birds in. They had
Oh, yeah.
pockets or whatever. And then when they come back to the house, I'd see them when they first started in the field. When they come back to the house, they're pulling birds out of their jackets and pheasants. That was the thing. I thought that was so cool. Oh man!
I remember one time they invited me. I was maybe 14 or so, and I didn't have a license, and I took my dad's single barrel shotgun, and they told me to go stand down at the end of the cornfield. And they come through, and this bird took off, you know. Boy, I got a beat on it, and I dropped it. And I'm so excited, the first bird I ever shot. And I run up to it, there's a hen.
Oh.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, I felt about that high. In front of all these, you know,
Experts.
seasoned hunters, you don't shoot bird. I mean,
You don't shoot
the
hens.
hens, no.
Oh, but I guess it tasted good.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever had
I
pheasant.
remember I had a couple brothers one time. They were spearing fish. And I don't remember the details, but the game warden come up and said, "What are you guys doing?" Because it's illegal to spear fish in the spring, you know, and they come up the ditch. And I don't. Maybe if they're here, they could probably say what they told. They lied to.
We're spearing frogs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he knew better. I was friends with his son, the game warden's son. And I remember one time I was hunting, Ted Gore would come over and he had a dog, and he said, "Let's go walk the fence." And I didn't have a license, so I'll go with you. So we go out, and Mr. Clough was sitting on 7 Mile with binoculars. And
Oh dear.
he comes walking across the field, and I knew his son, John. I'd been to their house, I don't know how many times. And he said, "How you guys doing?" You know, and I remember what Ted said. But he said, "You got a license?" And I stood there, I didn't know what to say. I said, "I think I do," or something. And he just laughed. He said, "You better get yourself a license, young man," or something like that.
Here, I've said this different times, but an FYI, if you haven't heard this, but the interstate, I-75, went through the center, the northbound lane was the center of our living room on Cody Road. And to this day, start at Sault Ste. Marie and take I-75 to Florida, end up in Miami. And in a rural farming area, Pinconning Road there's an overpass, and Cody Road is an overpass. It's the only place on the entire length of I-75, because back in about 64, 63, the highway department would come out and put one of those traffic counters with a tube across the road, and they chained it to a signpost, and it was just west of the house. And as soon as they put it out there, Fritz and I and the neighbor boy went out there, and every time you step on it, you click, click, click in the box.
And so we just ride our bikes back and
We did figure eights, you know, and so you go across there, and it's click, 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 click. So then they'd leave it out there for a week, and they'd come back, and they must have looked at it. Well, this can't be. It's basically a glorified two-track. So they take it away. They bring it back a couple weeks later. They did it 4 separate times. They brought that counter out there, and one time it was the old orange Suburbans that the highway department always had. They sat by that sign all day long, right by the thing. You know, they probably had 10 cars go past it. 5 o'clock comes, they go home. I don't think the dust had settled yet, and we're back out there with our bikes. Ding, 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 and stepping on that thing, clicking. So when it comes time to build a freeway, this road, we gotta put an overpass here. So there's an overpass, a mile apart, and it's the only overpass in a rural area. You can go the entire length of I-75 and nowhere, you know, outside of an urban area. You can go to Detroit and they're a mile apart. But
They should call it the Schmidt overpass.
it should be the
Should
Schmidt.
be.
But to this day, and when they built the thing, maybe that's the reason that they bought the whole farm, because it was they had to dig the overpass approaches came out of a 14-acre pond at the back of the farm, so they had to buy the whole farm in order to get the clay out of it. And so to this day, so if you're on your way up north, past Pinconning Road, and then if you straddle the center line, you're going right through the center of what was our house, the living room. And then right off to the east of that, there's probably still some asparagus and strawberries growing, because that was Mom's garden, right off on the east side of the freeway.
So what year was that they bought the farm?
They bought it in probably 64, 65 maybe, because the freeway opened, that section of freeway opened in June of 68. Because the year I graduated is when they opened the freeway. And it was open up to 61 in Standish, that section. So,
When you mentioned the living room, one of the things that came to mind is the original house. Mama would string clothesline in the living room across the room like this, and that's where we would dry our clothes. This is
In the winter.
in wintertime,
Right.
pre-dryer days, and you would walk through there and
I remember that when they built that, one of the first times, I didn't even know if it's finished yet, but the archway going into it, you must have come back and brought a whole bunch of friends from Detroit, and everybody got around and were singing out there. And they were just, whatever. Maybe Bob came in, I don't,
What year?
I don't know when whenever they built that section on the house.
57,
Oh, that was great when before.
because that's when that oil well came in and you had a bunch of friends up and,
Had a hayride, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
We all went over the gusher.
We were too young to know that, but we had I remember a bunch of people sitting out there and laughing and carrying on. It was time for me to go to bed.
What was it, Ruth, you were telling us during lunch about when the people would come visit? Was it you that you saw in their suitcases the high heel?
Yes. One of the things that, as time went on, my uncles, Bill and Chuck, brought girlfriends home and there would be couples, there would be whole, like 6 or 8 would come and they would bunk up in this unfinished second floor. And I don't know how old I was, probably 12, something like that. And all these city girls came up. They were girlfriends of Bill and Chuck, and their suitcases were full of beautiful things, including high-heeled shoes. Guess who got to prance around and go up and snoop in those suitcases?
Rude.
Yeah, I did.
You snoop.
Can't believe you would do that.
One of the things I remember about Ruthie is that she would fight me because she would get bobby pins. And I wanted bobby pins to curl my hair. And so she would put fingernail polish across the top so that she'd know they were hers. And if I found any of hers in my box, then she would yell.
Why didn't you get some yourself?
Didn't have money.
I mean,
to
they
earn
cost
my money.
10 cents a pack,
But that was in today's
is in the old
$10
days.
or something, yeah.
One of the things that, for instance, Daddy did not let me cut my hair until I was 8th grade. So I had braids, 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 braids.
Why wouldn't he let you cut your hair?
I have no idea. This is in the days when he was very legalistic.
Oh, he sure changed.
Well, anyway,
You cured him of that.
it's crazy how, why that, because I was always tall for my age, and at 14, I was, 13, I was 5'7", and I looked older, people thought I was older, and here I am in braids.
That's probably,
Amish.
Yes. Amish. Yeah.
he didn't make you wear a head covering.
No, he didn't. But one of the worst spankings I ever got, this is another aspect of Daddy, was on Sunday, we became friends with the Carruthers, which was another family that was in another school district, but we all went to the Methodist church. And Wayne Carruthers had a crush, and I'd go home from church to their house, and then the sister was several years older, and she wanted me to stay overnight. And I, at 14, decided to stay overnight without asking permission.
Whoa. Whoa.
I got one of the worst lickings I ever had in my life when I came home.
With a belt.
You know, I don't remember
Why
that.
didn't he just come and get you?
He did go and get her.
Yeah.
He went and got her, and she was black and blue marked across her body from the strap.
So there were that side, and then there's that side of our heritage.
Holy cow.
I know you didn't, because you know what? I could, and later, you know, when you were born, then I was married Shirley was 4 full years behind me, so that I was through high school when she started, and I could see the leniency occurring as years went by. Everything, began to ease.
Well, he must have toughened it up when I got there.
Yeah.
It was at the bottom of the barrel.
But you know, isn't it amazing? You all talked about getting whooping, and my last whooping was at 17 years old, okay? But we aren't in some psychologist's bench
I
because
know.
we are dramatically
I know.
Oh, you a
starved for
snowflake?
life.
No, what?
Yeah, it is interesting when you try to analyze. And our family definitely was different than everybody else's. We were kind of the outliers in our whole area. There were no overtly Christian families anywhere. You know, you
They were
had
mostly Catholic, if they were anything Polish Catholic or French Catholic.
Okay, question. Your father managed to get electricity earlier than most in the neighborhood, is that right?
Yeah, I honestly don't know when. And we also got a telephone, and for many years, you know, we had a party line, and it was one long and two short, or two long and three short, and there were probably 8, 10, I don't know, and
That's right.
quite a few people on that line, and you could just pick up the phone and listen. But it, you know, it was one. The other thing that is interesting that again, we talked about this a little bit on the side here, that for some reason Grandpa Schmidt sent Daddy to take piano lessons in Pinconning when he was about 14 or 15. He didn't do it with any of the other kids, and by this time, and then he ended up buying a pump organ, which is what Daddy practiced on, which was in the parlor. And so Daddy learned how to play the piano, which in those days is such a crazy thing.
Yeah.
Was he the youngest in the family?
Yeah, well, they know there were twins behind him, and I don't think they learned.
But I never knew that about him. Was he musical as far as like, did he
Well,
sing?
he liked music, and he really encouraged us all to sing and harmonize. And then he sent me for piano lessons. Did you ever have to take piano?
I did take piano lessons for a year, but I was a loser.
I
Well,
think I took him for 2 years, and I was a loser.
I think I took him for a year and I.
you did. See, I
They
didn't
said,
know
nah,
that.
don't bother with him.
Did you take a
He'll
piano?
never make anything.
But Ruth was good. She had the opportunity to go to Interlochen.
She didn't
And I
go.
couldn't go because it was bean harvest.
Right.
And really, here I got a scholarship that they offered at the school. There was one scholarship for each school, and it was boys, and I could have gone, but it came in July, late July, August, and no, I couldn't go. I had to stay home.
But you made it back.
And, oh,
Yes.
and this fellowship front in Florida, again, I took piano lessons from the pianist that was the family pianist, and she was, if any of you know Doris Steinhardt, who was, you know, all over the piano. Was very, very skilled, natural musician. And I took lessons for a winter down there, which was crazy. But I'm trying to think of Daddy learning to play a piano on a pump organ. I mean, a really old-fashioned pump
And
organ.
he became the church organist.
Yes.
Oh,
For
didn't know
years.
that.
And it,
He was?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I never knew
Uncle
that.
Bill was?
on the Hammond organ in the church.
I didn't remember that. I remember the Hammond organ, that he ended up getting that.
He got that himself.
Yeah.
In the house, in the old homestead, what later became when they took over, were evicted from the farm because of the highway going through, they moved to that house. And the corner room, which was, they took that room, was the parlor. And that was doors shut, and there was the organ in there, and it was kind of fancy. I mean,
And it was where, when
Died.
anybody died, that's where they were laid out.
Didn't they have some kind of church services in that room too, way back?
well,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, the Beaver
No,
Road.
no, I remember it was Hassel family.
Was that before your family was all there?
Well,
That's
this,
when they-
yes, it was during Daddy growing up.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they came here, they came from Europe, and they learned of the other German families in the area, and some of them were like in Beaver, which would like be 10 miles
Yeah,
away. And that would be horse and buggy to go and have, and they would have like house church at different homes. And John has the goblets that were the communion that were on the shelf in the house when they moved out, which was really pretty neat.
I had one of those goblets too.
Do you?
Question, did your parents have any nicknames for any of you?
Ruthie, Billy, Bobby, Shirley.
Just the names, not nicknames.
Rucci.
Rucci.
Rucci was the only one that I can And I don't know.
Your mom, Aunt Ruth, called me Lily.
What is it?
Lily. I guess I couldn't say my name, Shirley, so it was Lily.
Ruth did, my
Aunt-
mom called
Aunt
her
Ruthie.
Lily.
One of the things that I was always puzzled at, and I still am puzzled, my mother wouldn't let us wear makeup. We could not wear lipstick. She would wear rouge, but we couldn't wear lipstick.
Huh.
Where did that come from?
It was illegal, almost like a legal
Methodist.
Who knows?
Hmm.
Did I tell you
Did
about?
you pierce your ears? 'Cause I know-
Yeah.
She was 80 when she got her ears pierced.
Oh, man.
Tell us about your school years at Frenchtown.
Oh, there were 28 kids, one teacher, 5 in my class,
5 and 9.
and the older kids would teach the younger kids. You know, they would help them with their reading and their.
The big
Blackboards
Someone's having a big one.
on the walls, and some more books,
We had
English, arithmetic.
every so often they would bring rations, pork and beans.
During the war years.
Yep, and we would have some of those. And at Christmas time, they always built a stage.
Yes.
And we had a Christmas program where we all were in a play or we danced.
Or we learned the poem.
Yep.
And they had curtains, and that was a big deal. And the room would, this is a small building when I look back, and yet all the parents would come and the room would be jammed.
And Mama always made beautiful dresses, Christmas dresses for us. I remember big plaid satin skirt and white or black velvet tops.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Who was your teacher? You had the same teacher the whole time?
No,
I had 5 different teachers, each taught for 2 years or so. I went there from kindergarten through 8th grade, so for 9 years. And penmanship, writing, reading, arithmetic, English grammar, geography, and civics
and history.
and history.
Ooh.
And this one,
And recess. 2 recesses. And on Fridays in the spring, we would have ball games against other country schools.
No way.
We
Yes.
would walk to the other school.
to 9 Mile or to up in
Really?
White Feather.
No way.
Birdie school.
Yep.
Now, did you
See,
bring
I
your-
went to that
did you-
country school, but I only went for kindergarten.
Oh, that's
Did
That's
you-
when they closed it.
Did you bring your own lunch
Oh,
to school?
Absolutely. What?
Boys' outhouse, girls' outhouse, and everybody is in one room, and she's teaching all these different classes, which is absolutely genius.
And she was a 1-year college student.
Yeah, 1
She
year
went to
post.
college, normal
They call it
school.
college, yeah, no.
It was called normal,
Normal.
and she went to Standish, and then they were placed in rural schools. No buses. I walked to school every day from the time I was 5 until
How far was that?
a mile, almost exactly a mile.
And it was uphill both ways.
The school is still there, and it later became kind of a migrant residence for migrants. And
How was it in the winter when you were walking?
well, that's the other thing. We had a big round furnace, like 6 foot round in the corner of the room, with a big coal shed in the back.
Yep.
And the senior, whoever was 8th grader, and I always thought of them like men.
Big men, yeah.
And they were 8th graders, but they kept that fire all through the winter. They would bank it so that it would be there, and they would get it going so that we could, a big volume room, and
Oh.
eat a room of that was remarkable.
And Daddy was
On the board,
what did they call that? He was-
School board.
You was on the school board.
He was, but he was in charge of that school, and he would sometimes come in the mornings and work on the fire to make sure it was,
He didn't walk, did he?
no.
Because I went there kindergarten, 1st and 2nd.
oh, you did.
And I remember that the biggest thing was to go over to go outside for recess, and it was EVIV over.
Oh, I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that.
And
Yep.
kids that
Throwing a
thing over,
ball over the school.
yeah, and
Team on the.
boys or girls were on one side, and here it comes, EVIV over.
Yep.
Throw that ball over the top. And then I remember the Christmas program, and it was the biggest thing.
Oh,
Santa Claus showed up
Absolutely.
and passed out a bag of candy or something. And I can remember on the way home, they had come in a cutter with must have been a horse. And Daddy's driving along, look here, Santa was on the road. Oh my gosh, we followed that up, and it must have been going to the 9 Mile School because it went right beyond our house. We pulled in. I wanted to go there. Oh my Santa Claus came and showed up at the school, and
I don't remember that part at all.
What do you
and the
remember?
kids, kindergarten through, I think fourth grade went
Every
from
recess
9
we run out.
to 2:30.
Yeah,
And then 2:30 they went home, and the rest of the class,
And that would be our
classes
batting
stayed
order.
till 4
And
o'clock.
it lasted 15 minutes or whatever every morning and afternoon.
I know in winter we would bring our skates and we would go to the dredge cut, which was just
Big, deep dish, about 5 feet deep. And we would sit in the classroom with our skates on, between classes, between.
freeze our butts off. Oh my gosh, it would be so cold. We'd always go skate.
Ruth, tell us that story you started to tell us at lunch about some older, because I think you all kind of alluded to it, that the older ones taught the younger ones. Someone taught you math.
Well, when I,
Yeah, okay.
Is it showing this way or,
it's got all.
okay.
when I was 5, I started school. I did not know my letters or my numbers. And so I was assigned to a boy from the neighborhood. There were 3 brothers, and they had lost their mother, and they were being raised by their teenage sisters. And then their father was killed, and this guy,
Who was that?
Eugene Porschel,
Oh, Portia.
was assigned to teach me, and I remember sitting with him and teaching flashcards or whatever. And then his father was killed, and he moved away. And so we didn't see him again for many years. 20 years later, Dave is in the military, and it's at the Korean War, and they drafted a class of 600 or 650 doctors and dentists. And he went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. He's in alphabetical order, Penner, Porschel. And Eugene had become a dentist. And he and his wife were there. And he and his wife were marvelous Christians, and they had a wonderful relationship. And then years later, we ended up back at Highland Park Baptist Church, and that's where he went to church. And I went to him as a dentist, and then his son became a dentist, and we used him for a number of years. But from Pinconning. Also, Sue broke her arm in high school, in grade school, and we were living in Ann Arbor at the time. And I went to the emergency room, and who is assigned to her is an orthopedic resident by the name of Gilbert Casera, who I rode the bus with in Pinkonning's school, in high school. And he was now an orthopedic resident. So out of these very primitive schools, we got these professionals.
Right.
When I observe my kids and their kids and all the hocus pocus with preschool and making sure that everybody has this, going to the right teacher and the right classes,
Doesn't matter.
You know, this taping, the way I understand is so the younger generations can know about you. I am curious how you met, if you maybe go around and say who your mates are and how you met them. Because
right?
I think that's interesting.
Well, I'll start then. I went to Detroit to work at the FBI and immediately went to the Grosse Pointe Baptist Church. At that time it was the Burns Avenue Baptist Church. We were married a year later, and the Sunday that we were married was their first service in the Grosse Pointe Baptist Church. They had built a new building, and old Burns Avenue had been purchased by a Seventh-day Adventist who held their services on Saturday. Anyway, I went to church, there, and they had a very vibrant post-high school group of both guys and gals. A lot of guys went into the military and were coming back. And anyway, Dave was there at that time, going to medical school. I was 20, single little dum-dum. But I had a wonderful group of girlfriends who kind of adopted me because I came in and these had grown up together and they were well established. And so I joined in them, with them, and Dave had two very, what I thought, serious girlfriends. I knew who he was. I had seen him at 16 and I knew who he was and everything about him. And all of a sudden one Sunday night, he studied and then he worked in the summertime, so he was off and absent. But all of a sudden he showed up one Sunday night and he asked me to take me home. 8 weeks later, I had a ring.
Whoa.
And a broken-hearted ex-sweetheart of Dave's that took her forever to get over because she had gone with him years
She
and
thought
was
she was
sure
gonna be
she was
one.
going to be Mrs. Bennett.
Oh,
And you were 19,
what was
Yes, I
she-
got married the week I turned 21.
and he was how old?
Well, he was 4 years older. We married in April of his senior year of medical school. And so he was then finished, and then he had a year of residency in Detroit, and a year later, when Linda was born at that same hospital. And then because he was thinking of going into a residency, he did not want to be interrupted. And at that time they were drafting because of the Korean War. And he didn't want to start a residency and be pulled out. And so he decided to enlist. And so Linda was 6 weeks old. He went off to Texas, and that was then he came back and was assigned to Germany. And so then we were out of the country for 2 years. And during that time, Sue was born. So that's how
So it was a good ride home from Burns Baptist Church.
it was a very good, yes. But we had a very, very torrid romance. I ended up getting a bleeding ulcer, ending up in the hospital for a week because I wasn't getting my sleep because we were staying out so late. And at that time I was at the FBI and we were in a very busy time. I was on the switchboard and I had very intense days. And then I'd come home and I'd say, no, I'm not going out tonight. He'd call and I'm coming by to pick you up. And we did
Yeah.
that.
Tell everybody about your drinking though.
Some things you just don't talk about.
Okay, Shirley.
Oh, everybody knows our story.
No,
I know.
We've told it so many times.
You have
No,
not.
we know.
But
Bob,
this
you
time,
wanna tell them?
That version is completely different.
That's why you should tell them. I wanna hear your version, I never have heard.
have them sit by you and tell
And
it
how
together.
many years you been married and you never heard it?
60, almost 60 and a half.
Wow.
No, I went to Detroit upon graduation, and I was living with Ruthie and Dave for those first few days, first few weeks, till I could get into the Evangeline residence, which was the women's residence that the FBI recommended.
And she was working for the FBI
Oh, I
at that
didn't
time.
know that.
Yeah. And Fred Penner, Dave's brother, who was younger, he asked me to go to a youth Singspiration, VCY Singspiration.
Yes.
And I think our parents thought that would be a good match, Ruthie and Dave and Fred and I. I didn't think that was a good idea at all. I liked Fred, but he was not in my rearview mirror.
Fred, what are you laughing at?
So we went to the old Ebenezer Church on a Sunday night, probably the first or second Sunday that I was in Detroit.
This is where the fake news starts.
I'll leave it to you from here.
It wasn't the Ebenezer Baptist Church. It was the Connors Avenue Baptist Church.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Change the
See?
names and
Other
the
side of the
dial.
There we
Fact
go.
check.
This is where the FBI comes in.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Bob, continue.
Fake news, all right.
Hey, Bob, give us
He'll
the
just
short
go correct
version.
Yeah, give us a short version.
The short version,
No, I
I
like that.
chased her passive aggressively. And she insists that she was chasing me for how many
Aggressively.
years?
Oh my.
Well, Lake Chemung, did that have?
Well, at this first Singspiration that Fred and I were at, Fred kept turning around talking to some people behind us. And I saw him. He was towering over everybody. And I thought he was gorgeous. And I said, who is he?
Oh, that Bob is
She
gorgeous.
got his
Yeah.
story.
He was tall and blonde, fruit cut. He looked like.
Bob at
This
first
is the
sight.
true part. Can't be.
Was it love at first sight?
I don't know. Fred said, do you want me to introduce you to him? He said, that's my cousin. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'll introduce you. So he introduced us. And he said, hello. I have no recollection of our first date. I know what it was.
It was at Olympia,
It was to see the,
Harlem
Harlem
Globetrotters.
but that was,
Boy, that would be a fun date.
but that was a long time after that. I don't know. All I know is that I thought he was really
Well, you must have,
fucking-
did you spend any time out at Lake Chemung, the
Yes,
Tanner Family Cottage, which was out near Howell?
right,
And weekends in the summertime, all the family would go there.
right. His mother and her sisters and Dave's dad owned it together, so that there was often weekends where everybody was there. And his cousin Marlene was a
Oh,
good
yeah.
friend of mine. She was a classy chick. To me, she was a millionaire's daughter, which she probably was at that day. And for her high school graduation, she got this beautiful aqua Ford convertible with the tire on the back. And so she and I, we got along really good, and she said, she'd take me for rides. And all the guys on the roads were always hitting on her because she was beautiful and blonde and shapely and wonderful. But I wanted to get to know him. And she thought that was a great idea too. So we'd go out to the Chemung Cottage, and we went out there, and she said, tell him to take you for a boat ride, because his dad had a boat, and they were always, and so I asked him to take a boat ride, if you'd take me, and he said, my brother will take you. Oh, turned around and walked away.
Wow.
Is this fake news or is this real?
Bob was
This is the
shy.
passive aggressive part.
Passive, definitely passive.
That's when I realized she was chasing me.
Ah.
But meanwhile, he had my picture on his nightstand, his mother told me.
On his
It's on his phone.
On the nightstand.
He took it from Fred Penner.
Um,
And so, he had his own agenda. But he was so shy that he would turn red the minute you talked to him. And I don't have a clue how he ever asked me out. I don't remember. It's probably because it was such a shock. But anyway, that's how we met.
So how old were you when you married her?
Well, that was, I came to Detroit when I was 16 out of high school.
16?
Yes, I turned 17 right after I got there in June. And this was 56.
Well, it had to be the year that Dave and Ruth were married, whenever that was.
1954.
Oh, that's too early.
I was still at home.
That's too early.
Yeah, I was still at home then. But that's when you said that you first knew who I was.
Right.
Well, to tell you,
So
no
how
more.
long did it take
Because of
for
the
you to date?
Not long.
Well, I don't remember how long. I don't remember what it.
Bob, how long? Bob.
A year?
He's shaking his shoulders.
Oh.
Anyway,
So how old were you when you guys married then?
19 and 20.
19 and 20.
Okay.
And
I'm
they
20,
eloped.
he's 19.
They eloped, right?
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And when we were married, Bob Marlene, his cousin and my cousin now, their parents offered us a free apartment for as long as he was in college,
Oh, wow.
which was wonderful, which was why he, I think, was able to stay at school. But I don't know why I was telling you that.
Well, it's
You were
interesting.
going to say,
Oh, yes.
a year later, I was 20 and she was 21, and the census taker came to the door. And so I answered, and he's got a bunch of questions. He starts asking me these questions. How old are you? How old is your wife? I says, well, she's 21 and I'm 20. And he looks at me and he says, well, who's your guardian? I said, what do you mean, who's my guardian? He says, if you're under 21, I have to ask you who your guardian is. I said, well, put down her name. So for a year, Shirley was my legal guardian. That's what you were going to say.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh my God.
That's great.
Well, that had to be then on the even years, because that's when the census is, isn't it? Every 10 years?
I don't know, it must have been 57, 56. We were married in 57.
How did they do the census now?
I don't know.
I think they send out, some
Used to
census
knock on every
takers,
door.
Yeah,
Some do and some don't.
Yeah.
Now they're getting
it's
afraid of
very,
being shot.
yeah, it's very,
If they don't reply by mail, they send people out.
Right.
But you did,
If you don't send it back in, they'll send
Yeah.
people out.
Oh, really? Well, we have
Okay.
Okay,
That's the
well,
story.
let's hear how you guys met.
Bill.
well, this is about how we met.
Yeah.
It was love at first sight.
Where?
from across the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
We
telling
were,
the story.
Our mothers were involved in a farm girl ladies group, and they would have a meal in the fall every year at the Mount Township Hall. And so our mothers were there in the afternoon fixing it up. It was a real smorgasbord. They fed a lot of people. Anyway, a friend of mine and I showed up about, 6 o'clock.
Are you in Sherlock?
Yeah. So we walked into the hall and Diane was in line getting her food. And I nudged him, I'm going to take her home tonight. And he just laughed.
He did.
And so after we ate, my cousin Arlene Streffling was sitting talking to Diane.
she was a cousin to Diane.
His cousin Al married my cousin Marlene.
Yeah, and so she actually played Cupid. She was visiting with her, and so I thought, well, this is my chance. So I went up, sat down next to him, and of course Arlene introduced us. And she said in conversation that she wanted to go home. She was going to Delta Junior College at the time, and she had some homework to do or something. And so I asked her if she needed a ride home. And she said, well, I'll have to go ask my dad. And her dad and my dad were sitting in the bar room where they had weddings and stuff there. They were sitting visiting at a table. And she went up and asked her dad if I could take her home. And he said, yeah, I guess so. And so when she walked away, my dad said to her father, you don't never know, Warner, that was her dad's name, we could get a wedding out of this. And so anyway, I took her home and then made a date for that weekend. And I don't know how many months later it was that we were married.
Well, we met in January, right at the time when Grandpa Grapentine died,
Okay.
early '67.
Oh, okay.
So he gave me a ring like September. We got married in December.
50 years ago.
That was,
Yeah.
50 years?
50 years.
that's when they were building I-75, and I was working on an apprenticeship, and I was working up north in Sheboygan and Traverse City, And so I'd leave every morning at 4:35, and we'd drive up and work and then come back home. And I'd take a shower and go see Diane. And I remember they had barricades up at the expressway. The entrance ramp, when done, the Schmidt was all for it, but they didn't have the guardrails up or signs or anything yet. I remember I used to get on and I'd just fly to Bay City. It's like 17, 18 miles. And I'd just set the cruise at 100, get off. She lived on just off of Wilder, and there was an exit there. So I'd get off and, you know, we'd pick her up, and then we'd go out, and I'd go
I
home,
liked his
get home.
car,
Do you have a good car?
Oh, yeah.
a Riviera.
Yeah.
White.
Oh, the Riviera.
I remember that, yeah.
Fritz, you gotta tell a car story when it's your turn.
Yeah. Anyway, we were going to get married in January or something, I think. Anyway, I had bought a house in Bay City, and I don't think, well, Mom and Dad wouldn't let me live there, I don't think, until we were married. Because I don't remember living there. So I thought, you know, why don't we just get married? We get married in January, why don't we do it in December? And
It's a tax.
save some money in the taxes.
Exactly. That's how you
So that's what we did. We set the date, moved everything up. She was all ready to go to school in the fall at Michigan State. She was registered and enrolled and going to go to school. And I said, no, you're going to school.
Took a different turn in the road.
Yeah. So she didn't go.
How old were you all?
Huh? Was that-
23, 21.
Yeah.
Diane, when she was in high school, she was homecoming queen.
That has
Big
nothing
nice
to do with it.
Yeah. Also, Bay County Bean Queen.
Yes.
Woo-woo.
Yay!
Bean Queen?
Yeah.
That's even better.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Oh,
We're amongst royalty.
Yes.
Wow.
You didn't know it.
I hold a lot of them, so yeah.
Oh,
I did it for my dad, but because he was quite
Yeah,
prominent
she wouldn't
in
know
the-
once we got
in the
married
industry.
tycoon things. She wouldn't know for me.
Her dad was a big farmer too.
So I had 3 older sisters. I'm the only one that married a farmer.
Okay.
That's, I guess I didn't want to get back out in the field, so I always played dumb. Like, I don't know how to drive this tractor, or else get it stuck in the mud.
You do things on purpose so he wouldn't want you doing it.
I got an office job. Anyway, enough of that.
Did you have more to say?
No, not really.
Okay, Bob. Ooh, this
All
should
right.
be good.
Yeah, this
I'll
is
give you the short
That
version.
was quite a journey.
If possible.
That's a short version over 10 years.
Well, the short version is that
Because it was a long.
we met at church. I think that
What church?
at the Midland Street People's Church in Bay City, and for whatever reason, I had skipped church in the morning, and a friend of mine called and said there was 2 girls that came in, nursing students that were there, and so at night I went to church, and they'd come back to church that night, and we went out for pizza, I think, did we? And a short time later, we were married.
Five,
Fritz?
6 years?
No, no, you don't get off that easy. You don't
6 and
get,
a half years.
you don't get off that easy, come on.
6.5 years. No kidding.
Man, everybody else is less than a year.
I
6 Goodness sake.
don't know. She just would not want to. She didn't want to settle down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Can't say I blame her.
I remember Aunt Liz wrote a poem about that at our wedding reception, about how that he was going around all over the place, and I kept trying to haul him back to Michigan.
Well, didn't some guy start dating you or something?
A doctor.
And then all of a sudden Bob came right around.
That's right.
It turned him right
She
around.
had set the hook and she just reeled me in. It was
Not
just
really.
So how old were you when you met the first time?
When we met,
Yeah,
that
at church.
must have been 20 and 21.
How old were you when you got married?
6.
26, 27.
Wow.
almost 27, yeah.
So really, what happened in that?
It was a long
He
trip.
did a lot
was-
of
it was a-
traveling. He went to Europe.
He was
A couple
He was
times.
like a butterfly. He
Yeah,
was
and you
all-
worked in Chicago?
Yeah, I worked in Chicago for a year and then I
Doing
came down.
what?
Sprinkler fitting, pipe fitting.
Okay, I'm
At
On
the
a
Sears Tower.
I worked on a Sears Tower. That's why I'd gone to Chicago and I was there for a year. A year lacking 2 weeks, because had I stayed the full year, the union would have had to accept me as a local guy, and they didn't want it. So that was one of the times that I got laid off when they were hired. And the company laid me off and moved me out of town. They had a lot of work, but they wouldn't let me stay for the full year because. And the other part was that I was on an apprenticeship, and no one knew in Chicago that I was an apprentice. The only way that you could get a travel card was to be a journeyman. You know, you'd already graduated from your apprenticeship. And so the union, between the two, the Chicago union and my union in Michigan, they had put out that I was a journeyman, and they had sent me to Chicago as a journeyman. And then had they kept me the extra 2 weeks, they would have had to accept me as a journeyman, and I would have foregone the other 2 years of my apprenticeship probably, and I would have graduated, and then they'd have had to take me in as a full-fledged. So anyway, they booted me out, and then I came here to Florida.
At one time you were gonna be in the Merchant Marine, that was during that
Well,
period
Just
too,
before that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
before your apprenticeship.
Bill
Right.
Golden said there's a job.
yeah,
Okay.
that got me an apprenticeship just before my. So I joined the Merchant Marine, and it was after that I met you. So
So
anyway,
you
we dated for.
okay, but you were in Chicago, then where you came to Florida?
Then I came to Florida.
doing the same thing, sprinklers, like in, wasn't it malls and stuff like that?
Well, anywhere they'd hire me, but I worked at. They were building Disney World at the time, and I came here to Orlando. I was living in Zephyr Hills in my folks' trailer. At that time, it wasn't 55 plus. Anybody could stay there. So they went home, and I moved into their house, and
No, I bet it was sparkling clean when they
it was
came
sparkling
back.
clean. Absolutely. It was sparkling clean. Anyway, then I worked for a
When
company
he
that
left the house.
I don't remember where they were from, somewhere here in Southern Florida, and they brought me in and I worked on Space Mountain. They had to sprinkle, put fire protection in Space Mountain. They were just building it. And that must have been about 1971, 1970, 71.
Well, the park opened in 71.
So then it was 1970 that I had done that. And then I went back up north, I guess, because you could go all over. They had work wherever. And then we got married in 76. And
But we never knew whether there was ever gonna be anything happen here
oh yes, you did.
between the two of them.
It was
I remember, and I wasn't even part of the family. I go, when is this guy gonna marry her? I mean, I hadn't heard anything underground. I hadn't heard any. I was just noticing that. Come on, I was thinking, get on with this. You know, I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, but I
Amy was
just
probably
noticed.
doing the same thing.
And she was a nurse, so I could understand, you know, a little bit about, you know, gosh, give me a break, you know. So I felt for her.
But then after you got married, aren't you the one that you went to the Bahamas then, right?
no Virgin Islands.
Virgin Islands. Yeah.
Oh, okay. How?
2 years. 2 years after.
A year later.
A year after we got married,
That's amazing.
we went. Noreen and Herb
At
had
the boat.
the boat, and they had gotten to St. Thomas and decided that they're not going any further. This was where they were going to stay, and we went down on a vacation, and that was back when Eastern Airlines, you bought like a bus pass, or it was their fly around. You could stop at 2 weeks. You could go to any place that they flew for X number of dollars. You just get an extra coupon. And so we flew. Yeah, so we flew to Miami, I guess, and then we flew to St. Thomas. And our ticket was to keep on going. We were going to end up in. I wanted to go to Trinidad and Tobago, and we got to St. Thomas. We said, "Why go any further? This is so nice." We were sleeping. I remember the first night we slept. I slept on deck, and in the harbor. They were in the harbor, and I'd hear the halyards slapping the masts. You know, the boats rocking. I said, "This is just." You know, and so for the week that we were there, we just, oh man, this is nice. Maybe we should move here. You know, I think we should move here. I think we're gonna move here. And so then we,
Well, I went to the hospital
yeah,
and asked them if they were hiring.
yep. She went
They
to
said,
there.
"Can you start next week?"
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So we got back to we had to fly back home, and we got back here like the 20th or the 21st of December, got back to Michigan, and I remember coming back home and a big snowdrift in front of our door, and I was working outside at the Midland nuclear plant at the time, construction. She was working at the hospital in Bay City, and so on the 1st of February, this was December, so it took us all of January, and the 1st of February, we flew back to St. Thomas and had rented out our house, had sold the cars, had put some stuff in storage out in the barn, I think, in Pinconning, and stayed in St. Thomas then.
For 2 years?
For 2 years, and we came back a couple times, or 3 times we flew home. And that's when Daddy died.
Yeah.
Daddy died, and we'd come home on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah,
I got the call on things.
right.
But what
And they
year was
call-
that? What year was that?
That would have been
79.
79, yeah.
What did he die from?
You had a stroke?
He had a stroke. He was
Several.
walking in the field and he stumbled, whether he was.
We had been
because of the
home, that's right. Because I found
Yeah.
And
He was going out to see,
Billy was out.
Billy was out in the field with a tractor working, and he was walking out there, and anyway, he stumbled, and he
We must
ended
have-
up in the hospital, then
Right.
for, I don't know how long.
And Mama was gone kind of for the afternoon or whatever to a ladies thing. So she wouldn't have known he was gone.
Yeah,
But he had stayed out quite a long time, and she asked Bob to go and see if we can find
Yeah,
him.
we had come home because we were back in Michigan from Virgin Islands, and then I remember her saying, "Well, go out. Why don't you go out and get Daddy and have him come in for dinner or whatever?" And I drove out, and I got to the field, and you were there, but he wasn't there. And so then, as I came back, here was that little depression, that gully on the side of the road, and he was laid down, and it was the left side. He was paralyzed on the left side, and he had been trying to get up, and he had the grass all just pushed down. And I got him up in the car, and then got him. I
Well,
remember-
Bob pulled him out of that ditch or whatever it was, all the way up to the pickup and put him in the pickup.
oh, wow.
And Danny was a pretty good size.
And then I remember driving him down to Detroit, or to Bay City, to the hospital, and he really kept talking on the.
Couldn't understand.
Yeah, I
Didn't he
couldn't
live for
understand.
maybe 2 weeks?
Oh,
About.
Well,
We were scheduled to go back because we ended up
We did go
going back to St. Thomas, and they he went into that nursing home or whatever it is.
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
almost a month.
It was a month that he.
How old was he when he passed them?
76.
Because somebody called us on Thanksgiving Day. We had friends over, and so we
Yep.
got the first flight out. I think after we got back, he lived, what, 2 days?
One day we went right into the nursing home or wherever he was at, and then we went out by kind of Aunt Frida's somewhere to eat dinner, and he died. So we had,
Fritz was there,
Lou
wasn't
and I were in there.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, yes, and then we came back from the Virgin Islands in, must have been,
After Josh was gone.
Yeah.
yeah,
Was that because
so that was 80, so in
81.
81, we came back and stayed here in Florida, and then for a short time, and then we moved to Pinconning. And the rest of